and today I'm going to be showing you how I make my sourdough bread. So first I'm going to start with feeding my sourdough starter. This sourdough starter, I made it myself, but it's been in the fridge for a little while and it's looking a little bit gross. It has some gray liquid on top that I'm gonna pour off because I've been really busy and haven't made bread in a little bit. So I'm going to dump that in the sink, a little bit more. Okay, so now it just looks like that. It still has a little bit of gray liquid on top. And, oh my goodness. With my sourdough starter, I don't measure per se with feeding the starter. I do measure when I use the bread, or make the bread obviously. So I am going to get, you want to have as much, you want to feed it as much as there is sourdough starter. So I might take a little bit out first and then, well, let me start it up first. Actually, I'm not gonna take anything out. So I might not use all of this, but I'm gonna give it some flour. So I just poured the flour in there and I don't know if I'm going to add more, but I'm gonna get some hot water. Okay, that's hot enough. So I like to use hot water, not like boiling hot, but pretty hot water, so that my starter will rise faster. So I'm just going to pour some in there. And when I started out making sourdough, my sourdough starter was really thin. Whoops. My sourdough starter was thin, and you don't want it thin because then it's harder for it to rise. So I like to have it pretty thick. A little bit thicker than that. And it's not the end of the world if you make it a little bit too thin. You could just add more flour or add more water if it's too thick. So that's about the consistency that I want it. It's not like as thick as sourdough bread dough would be, but it's still kind of drips off your spoon. So I'm going to scrape down the sides as much as possible. I might feed it a tiny bit more flour because you don't want it to be hungry. Oops. The sourdough starter, I've named her Holly. That is what her name is. I've tried to do sourdough starters for a really long time, and this one probably took me like 6 weeks to actually be able to make bread with it. But now I've been making bread with it for a few months and it's looking really good. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna scrape down my other spatula with this spatula. All right, so I'm going to take this rubber band, or whatever this thing is called, and I'm just going to slide it up to the top of where the line is, and then I am going to pop the lid on. And then I'm going to let this sit. I might put it on a heating mat, which I have. And I'm gonna let this sit for a few hours until I'm ready to make bread, until it's at least doubled, so it'll probably be up to here or more. And then I will show you guys, I will be back in a little bit and show you how I make my sourdough sandwich bread. All right, so I'm back with my starter. It has significantly grown. It has been about 5 hours, which was way longer than it needed to be to rise this much. It was ready a while ago. But now I'm going to show you how to actually make the bread. So I have a glass bowl that I'm going to set on my scale. I'm measuring all this in grams. And then I'm going to zero out the scale. And then, ooh, that has honey on it. I'm gonna get a bigger spatula. Okay, so on my scale, my bowl is here. Whoops. And I'm going to put 125 grams of this starter. Your starter should be really bubbly and smell not too sour. So I'm gonna stir that up and pour in 125 grams. Oops. I have to scoop a little bit out because I added too much. All right, that's good. Ninja. All right, sorry. So I have my 125 grams. It doesn't have to be like exact. Now I'm going to get 500 grams, I think. No, sorry, 325 grams of hot water. Okay. Ninja. He keeps coming on the counter. All right, so I'm gonna zero out my scale again and add 325 grams of warm water. I have to scoop some out again. Sometimes I add too much of the ingredients. All right, so next I'm going to take that off the scale, and I have my dough whisk here. You don't need this, you can just use a spatula or a regular whisk, but I'm just going to whisk this up until it's well combined. And now I'm going to add the oil. I'm gonna put this back on my scale. Zero out the scale, and I'm going to add 12 grams of any vegetable oil that you want. I'm using coconut oil and avocado oil because I didn't have enough of the same oil. So I'm just going to add 12 grams. Okay, 12. So I'm going to add 12 grams of oil. Zero that out, add 12 grams of salt, okay, that's 12. And then I'm going to get my spatula for the honey, and I'm going to add 12 grams of honey. You can add a little bit more or a little bit less honey depending on how sweet you want your bread. So I'm just going to add around 12. Also, if you can hear, it's thundering outside. So anyways, this bread, I am starting making it right now at 8 o'clock. And then it is going to rest overnight. So, yeah. All right, I'm at 10 grams. And this doesn't have to be that precise, and I'm kind of going slow about it. So I got that in there. And now I'm going to take that off and whisk it again. And just make sure everything is combined. And it should just be looking like kind of creamish colored liquid. Alright. Put it back on my scale and get out my flour. So you have to add 500 grams of flour. It's usually around 3.5 cups, I think. Maybe a little less than that. I could be wrong. So I'm going to add that in. I'm at 420 grams, so I'm going to slow down a little bit. Okay, 500 grams. So I'm going to set this to the side and get my dough whisk again. And I'm just going to start whisking this up. Oops. Some flour went out the side. You can do this with your hands too. Sometimes I do that, but I don't want to get my hands that dirty. So I'm going to stir it up until it makes kind of a shaggy dough, and then I'm gonna make 2 loaves. I'm going to make one cranberry walnut loaf. I was going to make cinnamon raisin, but we don't have any raisins. So now I'm gonna make cranberry walnut and plain sandwich bread. All right. I'm just gonna mix this up a little bit more. So it's looking good. It's looking like a nice shaggy dough. So I'm gonna get the dough off the edges and then get my bench scraper. This is just a plastic one, and scrape down the edges of my bowl. You kind of like fold it into the center a little bit. All right. So that dough is done. I'm gonna mix up the other batch of dough and then I will be back. Okay, so I've just mixed up my second dough, and I have these. They're actually shower caps. Sorry, forgot what the word was. So I'm just gonna put those on there, and I'm going to set my dough aside. I also forgot to mention that I was using just organic, unbleached, all-purpose flour for the bread. All right, so then I have my sourdough starter. There's still quite a good amount left, so I'm not going to feed it before I put it in the fridge. So I'm just gonna put the lid back on and then put this in the fridge. But then I have my cranberries, which I'm gonna put in the bread, and I'm going to measure them. I don't usually measure them, but oops. I'm going to put in about half a cup into a bowl, and then I'm going to fill that up with some water. These are dried, I think, dried So I'm just gonna mix those around in there and let those sit until I do my first stretch and fold on my bread. And then I have not a ton of walnuts, but I'm gonna chop them up, so I have to grab a knife. Okay, I'm gonna pour these out. It's kind of powdery. Okay. Just gonna chop these up small. Not like too small, but pretty small. Okay. And then this is about a half a cup of nuts. I usually would do a little bit more nuts, but I don't have any. So I'm just going to set those aside for now. And, oops. Okay, so I have my cranberries and walnuts. I have my bread sitting, and I'm gonna let this bread sit for 30-45 minutes. It doesn't have that much of a time crunch. And then I will come back and do my first set of stretch and folds. Honestly, you don't have to do more than one stretch and fold, but if I can, I will do 2 or 3. So I'm going to come back in probably 45 minutes, which will be 9 o'clock, and then I will stretch and fold. So it has been a little bit over 45 minutes. And I'm only gonna end up doing 1 stretch and fold because I did kind of wait long and now it's kind of late. But I found some more walnuts in the pantry. So I ended up cutting up about a cup of those. But now I'm gonna strain my cranberries into the sink really quick. All right. So I just strained those. Now I'm gonna pour them back in. So I'll start with the non-cranberry dough. So I'm just gonna get my hands wet and then I'm gonna stretch and fold. So I just got my hands a little damp so the dough won't stick. But I'm just going to scoop gently under the side of my dough and pull it up and drop it. Pull it up and drop it. And I'm just gonna go around doing that a couple times. And I'm gonna wet my hand every once in a while so that the dough does not stick to it. And then you just rotate your bowl a little bit every time. And you just it's gonna come out of the bowl like that, and you just wanna shake it kind of. And since I'm only doing 1 stretch and fold, you're gonna wanna do this a good amount of times around the edge. That should be good. I'll do 1 more. All right. So that is what it looks like now. And I'm just gonna, I'm just going to pop this back on, just like that. And now it is done for the night, and I'm gonna let this sit overnight. Onto this one, I'm gonna rinse my hands. And I'm going to pour in the cranberries and walnuts. Might not use all of them. And it's gonna look like a lot of toppings at first, but it will be enough. Whoops. So I'm just gonna stretch and fold this one the exact same way. Whoa. And just kind of press it down in there. And you want to try and scoop up all the toppings with it and make sure they're well combined into the dough. And for this one, the cranberries are adding a little bit of moisture to the dough, so it's a little bit more slippery, but that's fine. And there's also some cranberries at the bottom. I'm going to pick up these ones. All right, so that is what the dough is looking like. It's super jiggly and nice. So I'm going to put the hairnet back on it, and then I'm going to leave these overnight for about 12 hours, and they're just going to sit with the hairnets on them overnight. And I will see you in the morning when my dough is ready to shape. Back with my bread, my dough. It has been a little bit over 12 hours, but it has clearly doubled. Both of them have. So I'm going to set those aside a quick second, and I'm going to get some flour, and I'm just going to lightly sprinkle. I don't want to put too much because then it won't like roll out the way I want it. That's probably good. Okay, I'll start with the plain loaf. I'm just gonna peel this off of it. And then I'm going to, I have one of these little scraper things, which helps get the dough out. So I'm just gonna scrape around the edges a little bit. Oops. All right, marbles just came on the counter. But I'm gonna scrape the dough around the sides of the bowl a little bit. There's another can on the counter. And I'm going to dump it out. It's gonna look a little bit sticky, but that's good. All right, now I'm just going to scrape the rest of this out of the bowl and put it in my dough ball. That's good. All right, so now I have my dough, and if you see any massive air bubbles, you're gonna wanna pop those. But now I'm just going to grab it and stretch it out there. And stretch it out. Whoa, that was a big air bubble. So I'm just kind of stretching it like in a rectangle type shape. This dough is a little bit sticky. Okay, so it looks like that. Also, I have two bread pans that are greased with coconut oil. And I am just going to take one of these edges and fold it halfway in. And then I'm gonna take the other edge and lap it over the first one. There's another bubble. And then I'm just gonna kind of fold in the ends. Get my pan. There's no really like wrong way to fold this bread because it's just gonna be one loaf. So it's a little bit sticky today. So that is just in there like that. It's not very smooth on top. You didn't have to like get tension on the top, but that is just how it looks. Now I'm gonna scrape off my hands a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to do the exact same thing to the cranberry loaf, and then I'll be back once these are both, once this dough is stretched out. I've rolled out my two doughs now. This cranberry one is looking really good. So now I'm just going to set these next to each other, and I'm going to just take a dish towel and just put it over them. And if you have a fireplace, you can set them next to it too, or a heating pad. My heating pad, I put it away. But you can just leave them on the counter or put them by the fireplace, which is what I think I'm going to do. And then you can just leave these for a couple hours. My mom got my heating pad for me. This is the heating pad I use. It works really well, and you just plug it in, and you can set bread on top of it, which is probably what I will do. And this will sit for a few hours until it has like a nice kind of dome shape on the top. And then once it has risen, I will bake it. So I will show you the bread once it has risen. My bread is almost done rising, and I don't have time to show you me putting these in the oven because I'm going to leave. But I am going to let these rise for about 20 more minutes, and then I'm going to put them in the oven at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. And then I will make sure they are nice and crispy brown on top. And then I will take them out and put them on a cooling rack and let them fully cool, so then you know that they are fully baked in the middle. And then I will come back and show you the finished product. My mom baked my bread for me, whoopsies. And it is done now, and it looks so good. So I'm going to cut into it to show you guys. Reed is behind the camera and he's making me laugh. Okay, so I'm gonna use this thing. I'm not really sure what this thing is called, but it's for cutting bread. So I'm going to do that. You wanna make sure your bread is not warm oh, that was such a wonky slice. But the inside of the bread looks really good, even though I cut a slice wonky. But you want to make sure your bread isn't warm, so that you make sure it's all the way cooked through, and then it's not spongy, which mine is not. And yeah, I put it on a cooling rack after I took it out of the oven, and I let it cool fully for probably like an hour. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed watching me make my bread and just learning how I did it. And I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. Bye.